so much in that question. I think we need to kind of unpack it a little bit before we can get any definitive answer to your question. Firstly, the innovations in technology we're seeing at the moment that are applicable to all sorts of industries, including the maritime transport industry, are going faster and faster, and we're seeing greater developments. But what we're not necessarily seeing yet is an embracing of technology in the same way. So one example I can give, for example, is the bill of lading. And we've talked about bills of lading before, and electronic bills of lading, and whether they can in fact replace current paper bills of lading. And yes, there is a certain movement, and in fact in the last couple of years there's been a much more of a groundswell of movement towards electronic documentation, but there's still quite a lot of resistance to that. And some of the resistance comes because, as you say, the law hasn't yet changed. So under the Carriage of Goods by Sea Act 1992, there are provisions that would allow electronic bills of lading to operate, or put it this way, there's a paragraph that says the Secretary of State may make regulations in relation to electronic documents, and therefore the legal interpretation is that Carriage of Goods by Sea Act 1992, which allows the transfer of title of goods by endorsement of bills of lading, does not apply to electronic bills of lading. So companies have taken this problem and sought to develop a technological solution. But as you say, the law is some way behind the curve. So now if we look at autonomous ships, we've got a host of different problems that arise, because we're not just talking about exchange of documents, sale of documents. We're talking about operation of a very large waterborne craft that has to interface with load port operations, with discharge operations, that might have transshipment during the voyage, that has all sorts of navigational issues during the voyage, but also there are insurance issues to consider, there are contractual considerations, and not least the flag state regulations. So I think you're right, that until we see some developments from the flag states about how unmanned ships can operate, we're going to have some difficulty. Will any nation, whether in Asia or elsewhere, enact legislation to allow unmanned ships in their coastal waters? I think it's rather unlikely until there's some general international consensus. So I would see that there's more likely to be movement through the IMO and through the international bodies than there is on an individual country by country basis. So the short answer to your question is no.